Welcome to Talent Sprint. I'm Giridhar. Today we are going to discuss about arrays in Java. Okay, let us discuss step by step. What is array? Array is a collection of values of similar type. All values are stored under a single variable name. And how to differentiate elements when they are stored under a single variable name? There is an index. Using index, we can differentiate one element with other elements. They are stored under the same array. Okay, now we'll see how to declare array and how to initialize array and how to access elements of array and how to figure out length of the array. Okay, now we'll just have a look at these steps first before we write first Java program using arrays. Yes. Now we'll see what is the syntax for declaring array. We use data type and we use array symbol. This is array symbol and array variable name. This is how we declare array. Now let us see one example. Let us declare an array of size integer. Int. So we can give some name marks. Marks is an array of type integer where we have just declared array. We didn't initialize. If we initialize, then memory allocation takes place for given number of values, then we can assign values. Now the next step is how to initialize this array. Now we initialize the same array, marks equal to new int, and we specify size of the array. Size of the array is 6, so that we can store 6 subject marks. And you need to remember few things at the time of declaration and at the time of initialization as well. At the time of declaration, size of the array should not be given. We cannot specify size. If you give size here 5 or 6, it gives error. So we will not specify any size at the time of declaration, and we must specify size at the time of initialization. Now we have given array size, that is 6. Okay, this is how we initialize. We can declare and initialize at one step. Now we'll see how to do both at a time. Declare and initialize array. Yeah. Int marks equal to new int of 6. This is how we can declare and initialize array. Before equal to sign, it is declaration. After equal to sign, it is initialization. Now, there is an advantage if we use arrays compared to local variables. Local variables don't have default values, whereas array elements will be initialized, array locations will be initialized with the default values. So there are some default values for every data type. For integer, byte, short, long, default value is 0. And for boolean, default value is false. For character, default value is space. And for string or any other object type, default value is null. Now, as we discussed, there are default values in all the 6 memory locations. Now, let us see how to know the size of array and how to access elements of the array. Now, to find size of array, we can simply specify array name, array variable name. Array variable name dot, there is a property called length, which gives the size of array. So as we created, the size of array is 6, but the index range of this array is 0 to 5. Index range is 0 to 5. So index 5 gives the last element of the array and 0 gives the first element of the array. Okay, now we'll see how to access elements of an array. We can use index to give value to the first element, to assign value to the first element, first location, we can say. So first location of the array can be referred using index 0. So array name, that is marks, first location index is 0 equal to, we can use some value, let us say 40. So 40 will be stored in a first location of the array. To store in the last location, marks of 5 refers to the last location of the array. So we can store some 60. We can also print values of array using system.out.println statement. To print array values. If you want to print first element of the array, you can use system.out.println of marks of 0, prints first value of the array. Similarly, if you want to print second element, marks of 1 will print the second one. We can use this till marks 5. We cannot use beyond 0 to 5, because if we try to use index 6 or 7 or any value that is greater than 5, leads to an exception, that is array index out of bounds exception. For example, if we use 6, marks of 6, this leads to an exception, that is array index out of bounds exception. So remember, whenever this exception occurs, there is certainly something wrong with using array. Somewhere we are using index value that is beyond the size of the array. Then we get this particular exception. If we give minus as a negative minus index or a negative index, then also the same thing occurs in array index out of bounds exception. Okay, this is how you can assign values and you can print values of an array. Now let us discuss about some advantages and disadvantages of array. If we talk about advantages of array, the first advantage is it allows us to access elements randomly. Random access. And we can also access in a sequence using index. Depending on requirement, we can also use sequential access. Whichever way we want to use, we can use random access or sequential access. You can access all the elements one after the other one. And disadvantages of or drawbacks or limitations of the array. Limitations of the array are, first one is array can store similar type of values. It cannot store dissimilar type of values. For example, we can store all integer values or all boolean values, but in array we cannot store one boolean and one int and the other one float and the other one string. That is not possible. So one of the limitations of the array is it stores similar type of values. This is the first one. And the second one is, once we create array, the size of the array is fixed. We cannot modify the size of the array. The second point is size of array is fixed. We cannot do any changes. If you want any array, if you want that to store greater than its size, then we will have to create a new array, then copy elements of the previous array to the new array, then we can use newly created array. But we cannot change the size of the array. So these are the advantages and the limitations of array. Now we will see some simple programs where we declare, initialize and access array elements. Yes. Now we're just opening Eclipse IDE. Yes. Now let us create a new project first. Create Java project. So if there is no Java project, you can click on others, and here you can see the third option is Java project. Next. Project name is arrays. Just click on finish. Yes. Let us create a new class. Where class name is, let's say, marks. Where we are going to use main method. Yes. Now, let us create an array. Int marks equal to new int of 6. We can create array like this, and we can assign some values to these memory locations. So marks of 0 is 20, and marks of 1 30, marks of 2 40, marks of 3 50, marks of 4 60, last marks of 5 is 70. We can assign values this way, or we can also use a looping statement to assign values to all these memory locations. Okay, we'll see further. And now let us print system.out.println marks of 0. It prints first subject marks. First subject marks. And similarly, using same println statement with a different index, will print marks of the other subjects. We're just printing 3 subject marks here. We're not printing all subject marks. If you want to print, we can add three more println statements where the index will continue 3, 4, 5 we use. Now let us see the output. Okay, here we need to change the path settings for the version. So we'll just create. Yes, you can see there are marks printed. Earlier there was problem with the JDK version. Now we are using right version. We are using JDK 7. We are not using JDK 8. Earlier JDK 8 was used. So there was an issue. Now that is resolved. Okay. So this is how we assign values to array, and this is how we print values of array. So instead of assigning values in this way, we have other ways to assign values easily. So we need not write these many lines of code. There is another way of assigning values. Declaration. This is declaration, and this is initialization, and at the same time we can assign values as well. So remember, if we are giving values, we should not give size. So remove size, and then in curly braces you can specify a list of values. You can specify any number of values. If they are integer, just specify values separated by comma. If they are strings, then you must change into the string, then values must be specified in double quotes. If it is character array, then values must be specified in single quotes. As we are using integer array here, we can give values separated by comma. Depending on number of values, size will be automatically taken. 50, 60, 70. Now we have given 6 values, so the size of array will be 6. You can also print using same system.out.println statements. Now let us see how to print it. Yeah, this is how it is printed. Output is same, but how we are assigning values to array was different. Yeah. We can also print size of the array. System.out.println marks is the name of the array. There is a property called length. This prints the size of the array. So you can print a message before that value, array size colon, and then size will be printed. Yes. So as I told you, now let us see what happens if we use index that is beyond array index range. Let us try to print value marks of, let us say, 7. So what does it print? This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So 5 is the last index. We are using 7. Yes. As you can see, there is an error. Size is printed. After size, then we are using one more system.out.println statement which should print value at index 7. Actually, there is no 7 index. The last index value is 5. So whenever you use index beyond the index range, then you will get this particular exception. So array index out of bounds exception, when you are using index 7, there is an error and it shows line number where we are trying to do that. If you click on this marks.java colon 11, it goes to the point where this error raised from. This is the line which is going to give array index out of bounds exception during execution. So we cannot use this kind of statements. Okay, now let us see how to assign values using for loop and how to print values using for loop. If we are not using for loop, we need to write so many system.out.println statements every time we want to print all the values. So we can use arrays if you want to assign, and we can use for loop when we want to assign. We can use for loop when we want to print it. Let us give size. If we are not giving values, we must give size. If we are giving values, we must not give size. So please remember this point. Now let us write a loop which will assign some values to the array. For loop variable is referring to the index of the array. So array index starts from 0. So we have initialized the index variable to 0. And index is less than marks.length. We can directly use 5 here instead of giving marks.length. If we give 5, give 6 here. 5 is the last index, so less than 6, it goes till 5. If we give some value here, the problem is when we change array size, we need to change it here. Not only here, if we are using so many for loops where we are using directly value instead of length, so wherever we use that value, we need to change value. So instead, if we use length, when there is a change in array size for other execution, automatically length will be updated. So always it is better to use length, marks.length. So marks.length gives 6 So less than 6, it goes from 0 to 5. Now increment that index by 1. Now let us write a logic of assigning values to this array. Marks of index equal to, yeah, I'm going to assign some values. We can give some constant value. For example, if I give 40, every memory location will be assigned to 40. So instead of that, if you want to assign different value, then we can use some other logic. Index plus 1 into 10. We are assigning multiples of 10 to this particular array. Those are marks. You can, as you can see here, array index value is 0. Initially it is 0. Then this condition will be checked. 0 less than length is 6. It is true. Then it will assign value in the first location of the array. So what is the value that will be assigned in the first location of this array? So 0 will be substituted here. 0 plus 1, it will be 1 into 10. So 10 will be assigned. So next time index will be incremented by 1. So it will be 1. So 1 less than 6 condition true. Then 1 plus 1, that is 2 into 10. 20 will be assigned in index 1. So that is how it will continue assigning values to these memory locations of marks array. Now we can print it using for loop. So let us see how to print it. We use again for loop. Index less than marks dot length. And increment index by 1 every time. Now system dot out dot println. You want to print all values in separate lines, so we can use println. If you use print, all those values printed in the same line. Marks of index. Now let us see the output of this particular program. And finally, we are printing size of the array. Yes. Now you can see the output here. So loop assigned multiples of 10 to the array, and the array size is 6. This is how we can assign values to an array using for loop, and we can print values of array using the other for loop. We can also print values using for each loop or enhanced for loop, where we will not use any initialization, condition check, increment or decrement. We will not use such things. Now let us see how to print values using for each loop. So this is I'm just printing a message that values, okay, using for loop. We can also print values using for each loop. Output will be same, but there is difference in how we write that looping statement. And we'll also discuss when to use for each loop and when to use for loop. First, let us see the output using for each loop. For use int value colon, then we need to specify name of the array, just name of the array. After colon, we have to specify name of the array. Before colon, we just need to declare a variable. A type of the variable is same as the array variable. So array type is integer and this is also integer type variable. Now we use system.out.println to print values. This is for each loop which prints values. Now let us see the output first. Now have a look at the output. You can see using for loop it is printing values from 1 to 60. Using for each loop also it is printing values from 1 to 60. Sorry, 10 to 60. Okay. Now let us try to understand how this for loop is working and how this for loop for each loop or enhanced for loop is working. As you can see, there is a big difference in syntax of for loop and for each loop. In for loop, we are specifying where we want to start, which value we want to start with. We are giving here. Using for each loop, we can't specify where we want to start with. For example, I want to start printing from index 2. We can easily do it by changing the index value to 2. But using for each loop, we have no facility to specify the particular index where you want to start printing from. And we are giving a condition here. Using this condition, we can read all the values or we can stop till half of the array length by giving some statement like this. We can stop in the middle. In for each loop, there is no condition. So you can't stop it in the middle. You can use some break statement inside this loop. You can stop that way, but you can't stop using some conditions because there is no place in the syntax to specify the condition. And we have increment here. In for each loop, we are not incrementing anywhere, so it will automatically increment by 1 always, and we cannot change it. Whereas in normal for loop, we can change increment. Suppose If I want to access elements in alternate index, we can increment it by 2 so that we can get first 0th index, next second index, and then we'll skip the next one and we'll print the other one. So we can print alternate elements by incrementing index value by 2, or we can also increment it by 3. Here using for each loop we can't do that. In for loop, if you want to print all elements in reverse order, we can assign length. In place of 0, I can specify marks.length, and index is greater than 0, greater than equal to 0, then I can decrement index minus minus we can specify here, and we can print values from last index to first index. The same thing we cannot do using for each loop. So remember, whenever you want to have a complete control over accessing elements, then it is always better to use normal for loop. If you are just printing, you are not doing anything else, you can simply say read only purpose, use for each loop. So this is the difference between normal for loop and for each loop to access array elements. Now we will see how to print sum of array elements. Now let us remove this code because it is just printing values of array. Now let us try to calculate sum of the array elements. We can declare a variable sum equal to 0 for index equal to 0. To calculate sum of array elements, we can use normal for loop or for each loop. Now let us try to use for each loop. Int m colon, array name is marks. Now sum equal to sum plus m. In the first iteration of this for each loop, the first value, that is index 0, marks of index 0 will be stored in m, that is 10, and sum is initially 0. So 0 plus 10, 10 will be assigned to some variable. In the second iteration, marks of 1 will be assigned to m, that is 20, and sum is 10. So 10 plus 20 and 30 will be assigned to sum. In the third iteration, marks of 2 will be assigned to m. So you can observe here, in every iteration, m is a variable which is storing different value. So when it is accessing, when it is pointing to the next value, what about the previous value? Previous value will be removed. As you already aware that a variable can store only one value. If you assign some other value, then previous value will be removed. So the same thing happening in case of this m variable. So third value will be given. So third value will be added to sum. Similarly, it will continue till the last index. Now let us print sum of marks. You can give a message total marks. Yes, you can see output here, total marks colon, and the total is printed here. So we can also print minimum marks, maximum marks, average. You want to print average, system.out.println, average, and we are using a pair of parentheses to give priority to the computation part here. Then the result of the expression will be concatenated to average colon, that is string. Now sum divided by, we can use marks dot length. We can also give 6 there. Problem is when we change size here, if I change it to 7, so I need not change here because we are using length, it will be automatically updated. If I give directly value here, some size, it will not be automatically updated. So it is always better practice using length. Now let us see the output for this. Yes, you can see total marks and average. So we can use this array to find minimum marks, maximum marks, or if you want to access alternate elements of the array, you can do it. We'll see how to find maximum marks and we'll print maximum marks. So we need to write for loop because we have to read through all the elements of the array in order to find minimum or maximum. Let us use for loop, or we can also use the same for loop to find maximum marks. Int max equal to 0, we are assigning. It's always better practice that we must initialize with some value. If we don't know any value, we should assign at least 0. Now the same for loop will calculate sum and also figure out the maximum marks. If max is less than m, then max equal to m. Simple conditional statement we need to add to find maximum marks. Now to print maximum marks. Yes, maximum marks is 60. So how can we print minimum marks? Minimum marks, if you assign to 0, there will be a problem, because if you compare 0 with any of the marks, 0 is less than all the values, so 0 will be there as a minimum marks. If 0 is also part of marks, that is fine. If there are no 0 marks, if you assign min value to 0, there will be a problem. So it's always better to assign one of the values of marks. We can assign marks of 0. The first element of the marks is considered as minimum marks, but that may be minimum marks or that may not be minimum. Using the looping statement and conditional statement, we figure out whether it is minimum or not. Now, the same looping statement we are using to find minimum marks. If minimum marks that is there, so mark 0, if it is less than the marks, so initially anyhow it will compare with the same value, and next time onwards it will compare it with a different value. If any other value is minimum, now we have to use here, so greater than. If min is greater than any other value, so the other value is the minimum value, so we are taking minimum value into the min variable. Now we can print it here. In marks, now let us run it and have a look at the output. Yes, minimum marks is 10, maximum marks is 60, average and total marks. This is how we can create array, and we can assign values to array without using looping statement and also using looping statement. And we use looping statement in order to access array elements and process them and print the output. If you want to print all the values, then we must use for loop or for each loop to print all values. If you want to print one value, you can calculate some or some other logic where it will get only one value after processing all array elements. You can print them. If there is only one value, you can use print statement system.out.println outside looping statement, so that it will be printed once. If you use system.out.println statement inside looping statement, system.out.println will be executed as many times as loop repeats. I hope you have understood what is array, how to declare array, how to initialize array, how to access array elements, how to find out length of the array, and how to process array elements using for loop and for each loop. Yes, we are going to wind up the session for now. We will meet next time with a new topic. Thank you.